Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Kate. I'm so happy that you're with me tonight, and I am very happy to welcome my guest, Dr. Patricia Joseph Thomas. Everyone at St. James School and Church, though, knows her as Dr. Pat. Welcome, Dr. Pat.
Good evening, and I'm so glad to be spending this time and sharing this screen with you and your fellow parishioners. Wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm thrilled to have you here. It's been a dream of mine for a long time to get you um, uh, on this show and to interview you. And I have so many questions, but I'm going to start, Dr. Pat, with the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, are you a native Angelino?
No, I am not. I am a transplant from the East Coast, from Pittsburgh to Ohio to Chicago to Los Angeles. I've been in Los Angeles 45 years, longer here than I've been any place else in my life.
That's what happens. We move here and we stay put, right?
Well, at the time, I felt that I was not going to stay and I wanted to go back to the East Coast. But how do you convince two young children, Mom, no
Yeah.
Disneyland, no Knott's Berry Farm, no beaches, no. So here I
I
am.
know, I know. It's true. It's true. Um, but do you still have that yearning, that East Coast?
There are aspects of the East Coast that really speak to my heart. More importantly, Virginia, which is on my mother's side, my grandmother, that's where she is from. That's where her family hails from.
Mhm.
So I try and go back as much as possible. And interesting enough, as a young child and spending summers in Virginia on the farm, you want to get away from that as fast as you can. The work is hard and you're from sun up to
Yeah.
sunset. But as you get older, something is
Mhm.
tugging on you to go back to those roots.
I know. I feel the same way. Um, it's just no food never tastes as good anywhere else. Just those sort of visceral connections. They mean so much. But you are here and you've been here for a long time, and you are the director of the St. James Preschool.
Mhm.
And you've been doing that for some time. You're also at St. James School, the director of community engagement.
Yes.
And I'm thinking maybe we'll just start there and just tell me what that means, and then we'll sort of move into your work as an educator and your experiences and beliefs. So first of all, though, what does it mean to be the director of community engagement?
Oh, that's like an outreach. That is like
Mhm,
making education and all those components of our school visible. When I first
mhm.
came to St. James, and I came here kind of like on a whim because a former client had said, I have a friend who's the director of or head of a school, and she needs some support as a director. And I said, I don't know. I'm not certain I want to, do that. I'm
Mhm.
comfortable where I am. So she says, well, I'm going to tell her all about you. So I thought to myself, oh, no, no, no. I will speak on my own behalf. And I came and I had an opportunity to talk with Debbie David at the time,
Mm,
and she was just mesmerizing. I felt so comfortable. It wasn't really
mhm,
an interview, it was a conversation. And
mhm.
I just felt that, this is something that feels good. It just feels right. And I always really try to rely upon that sixth sense that sometimes we try to push down and cover up. But
Yes.
when feels good. I mean, an opportunity is there, you just really have to seize it because there aren't many times when children and adults will get a second chance. So I came,
Mm.
what? Yes, I think I can do this. And honestly, she probably would laugh if she hears this, but I planned on staying for 2 years. And here
Oh my goodness.
years later, I was gonna go back into private practice, but there's such joy that happens on a daily basis, and I do get an opportunity to interface with children, educators, and also the families, and that's my passion is
Yeah.
family. So when you talk about community engagement, this school sits in a very rich community of so many different makeups and backgrounds, ethnicities and religions and ages. And I saw all
Mm.
of this as I came to speak with Debbie. Now, honestly, being in this on this corner, I mean, it's a busy corner. There's so much going
Mhm.
on. But that
Mhm.
community engagement, it starts with the senior facility to the north of us. It's that
Yes.
it's that synergy between the elementary school and the church. But let's not forget our firefighters. It's a station just down the street. We pay
Right around
attention.
the corner.
Absolutely. We pay attention to everyone that supports the community, and the school is part of the community. And I say this all the time, this community really should be our middle name because there are so many
Mhm.
people that support us and we want to show appreciation. And the only way we do that is like with cards. We're all constantly baking, providing
Mhm.
vegetarian minestrone soup pre-COVID. So hopefully we can get back to that. We can invite our
Aw.
seniors to our events as well. So that's what community is. It's sharing and caring and taking care of
Mhm.
each other.
Mm. Yes, and you mentioned that you had been in private practice.
Mhm.
When you're in private practice, are you, what kind of are you a psychologist or, what sort of work did you do?
I do family, I say family care. And
Mhm.
in a sense that my dissertation was on the sandwich generation because when I was a
Mhm.
teacher in school, I was a mother at a very young age. But then I
Mhm.
noticed that my parents becoming, they do their careers, they do their education, and they're all set up, they buy houses, and then they decide to have children. So the median age of many of my parents was late 30s, mid
Mhm.
40s. So you have trying to raise children, and at the same time, you're caring
Yeah.
for elderly
Yeah.
parents as well. So that sandwich generation was part of my dissertation. And in private practice, what I was doing was helping those individuals who were underserved navigate independent
Mm.
school admissions. And the funny thing is
Mm.
now is that when I read some of the admission things, I'm thinking, oh, this sounds familiar. Oh, yeah. It's a daunting process, and,
Yes.
families need help and families need support, and everybody wants the best for their child, so the kind of, practice and support that I was offering was to a lot of families who really wanted the best for their children, but didn't really know how to go about it. Um, there's so many ins and
Yeah.
outs and
Yes.
opportunities. People just were not.
Were you also helping them identify the schools that would be the best match for their children? Or did they already have the schools in mind?
Yes. Well, it's interesting you put it that way because parents will come, even in the admissions process here in
Mhm.
St. James. They want the best for their child, but their child is developing. So at 2, do you know what they're really going to be at 10 and 12? So they can see that the personality is developing. They know the interests that they have, and sometimes parents will come and they have the whole trajectory of what they want their child to go. Good preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, so on and so forth. So what I try and do is I break it down. Okay, where are you as a family currently? You have 2 or 3
Mm.
children. Some of them are still
Mhm.
spending money on their student loans. So
Mhm.
look at the puzzle of where you are, and let's look at the kind of education that you would like to see if you were to design the perfect learning environment. What would that look like?
Mhm.
And then I try
Mhm.
and match that up sometime in preschool, sometimes in elementary schools, and then
Mhm.
look at all of what they would like to be involved with while in the school. I mean,
Mhm.
schools, it doesn't matter sometimes whether it's, independent or
Mhm.
public.
Mhm.
There's a
Mhm.
certain level of participation that one needs to have and
Mhm.
provide. And I always say that those families that show up doesn't have to be on a daily basis, but once, the
Mhm.
learning system knows that you're interested in the child's education, they really put more into it, and those children
Mhm.
really say, oh, my mom's here, my mom's here. They want to
Mm.
be
Yeah.
involved, they want to please. So they always have greater successes in school. So I try and say, okay, are you willing to do this, are you willing to do that? What about the drive?
Mhm. Mhm.
What about those
Yes.
wonderful events. And for independent school, the cost of education might be one thing. Are you paying for books? Are you paying for uniforms? Are you paying for field trips? There's a lot involved
Mhm.
there. So break it down into, okay, this is what you'd like. But in actuality, the reality is this is what's the great fit and match for your family and
Yes,
then
yes.
around the area.
I like that you're describing it as a whole family picture. Um, you mentioned uniforms. Do they wear uniforms at the preschool level? They do, don't they? Or don't?
They do not wear uniforms here.
Mhm, mhm. I couldn't remember when I was at the preschool whether
Yeah.
they had uniforms or not.
I will say that the uniform is a comfortable dress in which a child can independently put on and take off because they are at that level of independence now. So,
Yeah.
whatever it is, whether it's pants, we want elastic, not belts with buckles and things like
Yes,
that.
oh
Yeah.
gosh. Oh my goodness. So now I want to hear a little bit about our preschool and about your sort of the educational outlook that shapes and influences how you've set it up, how things work at our preschool. Um, what is that learning environment all about?
Oh, well, I have to say, no 2 days are ever alike. It's
Okay.
child-centered. When I first came here, the teachers were amazing. They showed me everything they had prepared for students and children, and it was really remarkable, their instruction and their
Mhm.
curriculum. But I often said, uh, "Don't you wanna wait to see who comes through the door?" Because
Yes.
I think that, and one of the things that I tried to do was really to step back, take a look at all that was here and who's who and what they could do, understanding, where people were, if this is where they wanted to be, the developmental age and stage that they were teaching. And then I kind
Mm,
of went through and I made not a lot of suggestions, but I proceeded to do the work. I bought some
mhm,
plants, I bought some dirt, and I bought some tools, and I started digging in soil, and some people who would perhaps never, uh, because they had the manicures, whatever, but they saw the difference that it made, and then they wanted to join as well. So I think it's
mm,
it's, one of the things that sometimes we jump in and wanna do things, right away. I kinda take it slow and make sure that I'm not asking anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. Now, having said all of that, I want to say that this is a place where we turn ex- ordinary moments into extraordinary learning opportunities. That's my motto. So
oh,
I
I
want to
love that. Wait, say it again. Ordinary moment.
turning ordinary moments into extraordinary learning opportunities. And the
Mm,
best way to do that is to find the heart of every child through
mhm.
observations. There's that wonderful sense of understanding who a child is, just by how they come in the morning, those activities that they gravitate to. So I think my
Okay, so
biggest
let me stop you right there. Can you just hold in your mind the image of one child, any child, and she's coming in coming in the morning, and tell me, what's your thought process? How what do you see that's telling you something about what she needs?
Oh, the gate at which they enter. Are they skipping in? Are they running in? Are they a
Oh,
little reluctant? Are they clutching tight to a lunchbox or to a lovey or something of that?
mhm,
Particularly now, as a lot of the parents are dropping off at the door. So if a child is clutching something tight, I want to say, "Oh, this looks like a well-loved teddy bear. I have a teddy bear too. It's not that big. My teddy bear's name is no, 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 so and so's teddy bear." So
mhm,
I mean, really, the child knows that you're seeing them. You are acknowledging that something that they are clutching. Maybe it's not something that they do every day. Someone came in the other day and
mhm.
they had on a new pair of shoes. And I said, "Oh, those look like new shoes. I bet you can run fast, jump high." And they ran to the classroom and lickety split. And the dad said, "He's never running. He's never." I said, "It's the shoes. We got to go shoe shop." Just a careful observation in how a child holds, gathers, and carries themselves will tell you a lot about sometimes what's going on in the morning. And I think that one of the things that the teachers always do is at the beginning of every day, they have a circle time in which they go around They acknowledge everybody who's there. And if a friend is not there, we say, well, gee, I wonder where they are. If by the third day we haven't seen or heard, we're at circle time using our cell phone, giving them a call and saying, we're missing you. So it really
Mhm.
says that this is your home away from home. You are included.
Yeah.
This is your classroom family. So I just try and say that we are a family here at school. Everybody takes part
Mhm.
in really encouraging, cooperating, coordinating, and collaborating with each other. And I think that some teachers have been here for a long time. Some teachers are like fresh out of school. And I
Mhm.
think that we're all supportive of each other and giving each other feedback. And how we do something doesn't mean that's the only way it's to be done, but this is what
Mhm.
works for me. So I think that when I come in where this is how I do it, you may choose to do it differently, but this is what works for me.
So here's another question. Okay, so when a child comes in the morning, just coming the way that they enter the school, some of the things that they may share or not share at circle time. Um, what about what about sort of children as learners, how children, individual children may be different learners? What are some clues you get about that?
Oh, that's a great question. We have differentiated instruction here. I say we don't teach, we facilitate a child's development. Um,
Oh, I like
we
that.
offer wonderful activities inside the classroom. But I was always one of these children that those four walls were not always the best learning environment for me. I like the freedom of outside learning spaces, blue sky, listening to the trees. So when I came, everything that was offered inside, I made sure that the children were able to experience those activities and those experiences on the outside as well. If there's block building inside, there has to be block building outside. If there's art
Wow.
there has to be art outside. There's sensory inside, there's sensory outside. The only thing that the children can do outside that they can't do inside is climb and jump.
So do you find that some children gravitate toward the outside like you did as a child and others prefer to be inside?
Absolutely. I think that there are some children when they get outside, you can just see how their whole body can either kind of just relax and just independently choose
Mhm.
an activity and stay with it. There are other children who just want to run freely and back
Mhm.
and forth and around. And that's perfectly all right too, because they're really exploring the boundaries of which they can work and play. So they may do a couple of laps before they settle in to find something to do, which is a lot more challenging inside because there's so many more things in which you have to navigate furniture, materials, friends, and
Yeah.
teachers.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Do they do you talked about digging and sort of gardening. Do they do that indoors too or just outdoors?
Well, they do have sensory activities indoor, and sometimes we will have shaving cream, flour, rice, and
Mhm.
just so there's so many things with food that we do other than just
Mhm.
prepare and eat. So there's always some sort of sensory activity inside. But we also do the gardening outside. We will bring small plants inside more or less as a science opportunity in which we'll put
Mhm.
one in the light and we'll put one in a shaded area, math and measurement. But when we take them outside, I think those are our most successful opportunities for children to become engaged. And what child doesn't like dirt and water? But if we see little holes in the leaf, uh-oh, something's eating. We have been looking for these little worms, mealy bugs, whatever they are, because they've eaten up. So we just can't find them. So, I
Mhm.
mean, the children have gotten magnifying glasses, so they swear they only come out at night when everybody is at home sleeping, so
Oh,
that
no, that's
we're
what
going to
they do.
find something.
That's
Yeah,
cute.
I mean,
We
they
have a
have
question in
sure.
we have a question in the chat from someone from St. James School, I mean St. James Church, Comfort Ogbunamiri. I don't know if you've ever met her over the years.
I've
She and
seen
she's asking a question about how do you care for children with special needs in our preschool?
Oh, Well, interesting enough, that term special needs, we all have special needs,
Yes.
but some of us require more one-to-one attention in making sure that they get all that they do need. And it's not a matter of fairness, but it's a matter of equity. And equity is giving children what they need. And generally speaking, no two children need the same thing. So it's making sure that you give them what they need when they need it. Some children can do things, other children choose not to do things. So it's finding that fine balance. And our teachers are wonderful because they always encourage and inspire. And one of the things that I really discourage teachers from doing is providing a sample of work. Because if you say, I
Oh,
want to
yeah.
draw a tree, and you're drawing a tree, and a child feels that they cannot do it, or they make an attempt and it doesn't look like what you do, then they will no
Mhm.
longer want to draw trees. But if they want to draw a stick, if they want to draw a purple tree, I'm going to say, wow, a purple tree? I've never seen one, but I sure would like to see one someday, really. And if I do, this is, I'm sure, what it's going to look like. So there's nothing, it's guiding, encouraging, and inspiring the creativity from within. Every child is born with that creative nature and that curious sense of wanting to know. And I think it's important that they have more questions than we have answers for.
So that's very beautiful, and it sounds like you're disputing the whole notion of special needs as as regular learners versus learners who struggle.
Mhm, mhm. Well, we should all be struggling at something. We should all be struggling at something.
Mhm.
Some of us just don't show our struggles as vividly as others. But having a child who needs a little extra time, maybe needs a few moments where they can just run around, because they want to
Mhm.
be more attentive, and being able to focus means that they've got to get up and do something in order to bring that internal regulation back. Um, it's not a matter of disputing. I guess it's a matter of we all need something, and it's important that the facilitators and the educators and the instructors can recognize that. And the only way you can do that is really through mindful observations and giving
Mm.
a child time. I think one of the things that I hear from teachers all the time is, we don't have time, we don't have time. We're always
Mm.
bogged down with this paperwork. And I think that we're robbing children of the time that they deserve when they're in a classroom discovering and creating and things of that nature.
You
Does
know,
that make sense?
this is so refreshing because I remember when my children were in school, even at the preschool level, it seemed like there were these benchmarks, and everybody
Mhm,
needed to get to the benchmarks, and you were either getting it or not getting it, and there was just this sort of almost a kind of shaming built in,
mhm,
and
mhm,
people who were faster at getting there were more valued. I mean, all those messages were coming through all the time.
mhm.
Even at the preschool level. I just remember, I remember there was even there were even judgments about who was toilet trained faster. I mean, all of the there was there were, how parents can, maybe not your
Oh,
parents, but
yes.
many parents can be so competitive. And I don't know, I love this idea that you're talking about, that every individual has they're on their
Mhm.
own time.
It's called development. And no two are the same. So when you talk about those benchmarks, there are times when you say, okay, well, if they're not walking by 1.5, then, maybe let's explore. Maybe we need a little bit more support. Maybe there's a little bit more encouragement, something like that. So I want to say that benchmarks are a way of letting us know how we can support a child more. And, I think
Okay.
yeah, and, I with this toilet learning, those parents say, "Well, do they have to be toilet potty trained?" And I say, "Well, toilet learning is a process. It's like separation transition. I get a lot of parents who say, "Oh, they're already potty trained, they're already potty trained." But they forget that if you're one of 14 or 15 children and you've had delayed gratification to getting to a seat to paint or draw or whatever, and you get that funny feeling, you're not gonna leave that activity and take care of what you need to do. You're just not gonna do. Again, through careful observations, a teacher can understand and really observe that strange little wiggle. And what we do is we say, we're going to save it for you. Nobody's going to touch it. We're going to save it just for you. We're going to go to the bathroom and try and use it. And when you come back, it's going to be here just for you. So understanding the principle that,
Oh,
I'm not going to lose anything by leaving it and going and check. But it's the same thing with separation transition. Oh, kids will be fine. They leave me all the time, right? Yeah, but the first day of school, they're crying and crying and crying. Now, sometimes the child is ready and the parent is not. Sometimes the parent is ready and the child is not. So we try to work through this. So I always say it's uh, it's an individual case study for each child and
what
family.
happens what happens when, my daughter was like that in preschool? She would just go to pieces
Mhm.
at drop off. What are some of your strategies at a time like that?
Oh, children want to be heard and they want to be acknowledged that they're feeling, sad and that they're missing their parent. And I always like notes. You know what? I say, you know what? You're, it's like you're really, really sad. You're not really happy right now. I'm going to get a piece of paper and I've got this marker and I'm going to write a note to let somebody know how sad you are. You know, and then their eyes open up. Yeah, tell my dad or tell my mom. And I put their words up. You've got food reading. You've got, sometimes I fold it into an airplane and try and say, "Well, we're going to come back. We're just going to fly this right to them and get them as fast as they can." They just want to know that someone understands that they're not having a great moment and just the acknowledgement of putting their words on a piece of paper. Sometimes by the end of the day, they forget, but most of the time they want to take that note home just, just to stick it to the, yeah. So,
So,
so we get
it
lots
sounds
of
like
notes.
in that moment, you're really honoring their experience
Mhm, mhm. Yes,
because it's so
absolutely.
real.
It is, it's
It's
very real.
so
And there are times during the day as well, sometimes parents will come in and they say, "Well, how was their day?" And I always say, "It was exceptional, it was wonderful." There may have been a few moments when we could have, lost it, internal regulation, but for the most part, that does not determine what the entire day was like. And I
mm.
always say, Mother Kate, sometimes when children are having a difficult time, parents too, you don't want to be the center of attention. So sometimes just say, "Come on, you can come on here. I know you're having, you're crying, you're feeling sad. This is a place in which you can spend as much time as you want to. Take a couple of deep breaths. And when you're ready, we can talk, we can draw, we can write, or whatever." I have books in my office. I have puppets. Sometimes when they're feeling better, I say, "Yeah, is it time to go back now? I've got some work to do." But knowing that you have a safe place makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, because it's scary
So
when
I have a
everybody. Mhm.
yeah, I know, and I also think there's probably children for whom being around so many other kids for hours at a time can be exhausting.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh,
So
it is. Delayed gratification, taking turns, caring and sharing. This may be the first time a child has had routines. And I always want to say guidelines. I tell the teachers all the time, let's not have classroom rules. Let's have guidelines because, they're easier to adjust
yes.
so guidelines are an easy way so a child doesn't always feel, "Oh my goodness, I broke a rule." I mean, that's just a little bit kind of harsh
So what are
for
some
me.
examples of guidelines?
Well, guidelines are hands are for helping. Uh, guidelines are, you know what? Y- Hands are for helping. Let's help our friends. If someone is feeling sad, let's give them a gentle, encouraging lift with our hands. towards rather than pushing away. Hands are for helping, and if someone needs something, let's gently pass it to them rather than throwing it to them. If you need something and your words don't work, please come and get a teacher or an adult, and we will help you with your words because maybe someone else doesn't understand them. With young children, it's all about instant gratification. And so
Mhm.
sometimes hitting, pushing, kicking, even biting gets them exactly what they want at that moment. But then we have to take a step back and say, this other child doesn't look happy. I wonder what happened. Do you have any idea? Let's ask them, what is it that they need? So you always want to get both
And then they
children.
can say, "I didn't like it when he bit me."
Mhm, 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 yep. And there's a mark there. What do you think? We need to get some ice. Let's get some ice for this person, and just opportunities to make them feel better.
I heard you use the term internal regulation a few minutes ago. What's that?
Oh, internal regulation. That's the resilience for a child. In spite of all that's going on, sometimes doesn't fall apart and fall to pieces. They can keep it all together. That internal regulation is being able to stop your body when you really want to run to the door and push the door and go and go out. That internal regulation says, "I need to stop my body because adults are the only ones that open the door, and I know someone will be here shortly to open the door so we can all go out." That internal regulation is follows the thought sometimes of the critical thinking in that
Mm.
you know I, I really want to do this, but I'm going to look at all that will happen if I do, and
I
that's
feel like adults need to work on internal regulation a lot more than we usually do.
yeah. Well, that critical thinking part starts with that developing that frontal lobe, and I always say that's the last to be developed and the first to go. So we have to do things, yes.
We have a question in the chat from Betsy Anderson. Do you know Reverend Betsy Anderson?
Oh,
She,
yes, I love, 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 love
yeah,
her. I listened to a
she
couple of things.
mentioned that she's so proud of our preschool, and she wishes that you were there when her kids were in preschool. And she also
Oh,
has a question, and she says, "What are the primary goals for our preschool? Not so much in a linear way, but in a broader, holistic sense."
oh, good question. The
So
primary
that's
goal.
what benchmarks is really. It's more of a sort of, I guess I would say, by the time a child leaves the preschool, what are some of the
Some of the goals that we would have for them
Mhm.
would be understanding that they are unique individuals, they are creative, they are curious, and have that trusting relationship with adults and peers and their learning environment. Because when you have that trusting relationship, you feel good about yourself. And when you can feel good about yourself, there are no limits. You will try anything and everything. And if it may not turn out the way you want to initially, but you don't stop. You'll try it a different
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
When it
Mhm.
doesn't work, I always say it's not important that we have all the answers, but it's important that children know where to go to get the answers that they need, to get the support and the help they need. So those trusting relationships are important. And I think going back to my being kind of like the outreach, community engagement. It's like building those relationships with the people who are in your environment, people who are in your neighborhood, people that support you
Mhm.
on a day to day basis to make sure that you are safe and secure from the mail person who delivers the mail. And he is magnificent. He always shows up with a smile. We just love Anthony. We make sure we take care of Anthony. To the seniors, we want to make sure that we say hello to them. To the firefighters, as they're going, we want to wave to our sanitation workers. Being
Mhm.
able to acknowledge and respect, understand, and fully aware that there are people that really help and support them on a daily basis. So I think that trusting relationship, builds the identity of a good person and can really motivate young children to really enjoy learning.
Yes. So you said feeling good about themselves makes it so that anything is possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. That self-esteem is so very important. That
Mhm.
mindful um, the, the mindful way of which we work with young children is so important because they are the future. We're preparing them for a world that we don't know what's going to exist. So
Mhm.
it's best that
Mhm.
they feel good about themselves because if you feel good about yourself, you will care and share with someone else. And it's that caring and sharing that's going to bring the world together in not a competitive way, but in a cooperative way.
Amen to that. And that reminds me of another question that I've had, which is how in the preschool you all talk about hard things. And here's an example that comes to mind, and that is the pandemic. I mean,
Mm.
it's been it's been such a challenging couple of years, and I think the preschool was the only part of our school that carried on almost without stopping. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is correct. Our
How do you
teachers,
talk about the pandemic with little ones?
oh, I have to tell you, well, first things first, we have child-size sinks in the bathroom and outside. So when this first started, before the mask, we were saying, "Wash your hands." What we had no problem with the children washing their hands. We would have to say, "Okay, somebody else is wanting to wash too." I mean, just the independence of lifting the lever and the water comes and lifting it down. I mean, they were all into washing their hands, and they could never have enough soap. But interesting enough, it's when the mask came on, I think that it was new for a lot of children, but I think a lot of the parents and families really supported us by starting that at home and when they were taking the children out. So when they came to school, I mean, it was like it was on. It didn't always stay on. Some children were having it under their chin. A couple of kids had it as headbands on their head. But I think when you model the expectation, they really get it. For the most part, they do keep it on unless they're wiping their nose or eating. But interesting enough, when we talk about children and feelings and emotions and how someone doesn't feel good and how some may and sometimes don't feel good because of the way they act or if they're sneezing or coughing or whatever, it gave children, I think, a sense of paying more attention to the eyes. I think
Mhm.
that we just kinda turned away and took for granted, looked at people's smiles, and smiles can tell us a lot, but you really have to look into the eyes, and it's always said the eyes are the windows of the soul, so
Mhm.
when you look someone in the eye when you're talking to them, because with the
Mhm.
mask, you can't always hear, so it's kinda like, "Tell me again," and you get right at their level, and then they'll
Mhm.
stop what they're doing to tell you again. But sometimes in the course of this pandemic, we're talking about how it's our job to keep ourselves safe and to keep others safe too. Aha, there's the key. Every child wants to be independent. They feel like they can save the world. So when you tell them it's your job to keep yourself safe and keep others safe too. It's my job to keep all of you safe. So I've got to take care of oh, and don't forget, I've got to take care of myself too. So I've got to keep my mask on. I've got to make sure my hands are washed as well. So when they understand that it's not just them, but it's everyone, then they don't feel so alone and they don't feel so isolated in the
Mhm.
process. We have
Mhm.
children now, some of them who've taken their mask off, but others who feel more comfortable with it on because they're still under that mantra. I'm going to keep myself safe and I'm going to keep my friends and my teachers safe too. So it's all about that
Oh,
collaboration and that cooperation. And I think for the most part, that's what's getting us over the hump here because
yes.
it was a struggle. It was a struggle for adult, more so for the adults.
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah, I guess because we had so much more of a life experience without masks, you know?
Mhm, mhm,
Now,
exactly.
Comfort of Bunamiri has another question for you. She's wondering, what do you consider your favorite part of working with preschoolers?
My favorite part. Ah, in this position, I think
Yeah.
it's ideal because I have an opportunity to not only work with young children, but I have an opportunity to work with those individuals that facilitate their development. And because I'm working with young children, parents, for the most part, are far more engaged in a student's life. They want to know everything that a child
Mm.
is doing when
Mhm.
they're in school, which is why our teachers do an amazing job of doing these wonderful newsletters every day with activities that they're doing, who they're doing it with, the
Oh,
grade.
nice. So they can talk about it at home. Yeah.
Oh, that is the best because, when you get a young child, "What did you do today?" "Nothing." "Who'd you play with?" "No one." You know, and
Mhm.
then they can pull up on the phone, "Oh, it looks like you did yoga today, and I see that little Johnny was using somebody else's." And, they just think that parents know everything about everything. Little do
That's
they know that
great.
these keeping it all home. Yeah, it is.
How do you support your teachers?
Oh gosh. Ah, that is probably $1,000,000 question. Knowing what they want, knowing what they need, and what they want and what they need may differ from what they'll tell you.
Mhm.
But just getting a sense of knowing who's who and acknowledging that they all have independent lives in and away from school. And sometimes it's very difficult to kind of leave it at the door. So you always have to be
Mhm.
here to support them in what to do. And
Mhm.
I'm not the type of person or director that sits behind a desk all day. I'm always in the classroom. I want to know the teachers. I want to know the children. I want to know their instructional styles. I want to know the children's learning styles. So I'm always out and about, seeking more ways and more opportunities to learn about this wonderful faculty. Now,
Mhm.
supporting teachers, Peter's always really good. He's always buying lunches and smoothies
Mhm.
and everything. I mean, I think we've all gained a little bit more weight since he's been here. But, prior to the pandemic, it was just those professional development opportunities to get out and see what others are
Mhm.
doing, and see what components that resonate with you that you would like to try
Mhm.
and bring back, and just to hone your
Mhm.
craft on what you do.
Mhm.
Knowing who's who and if they're comfortable where they are.
Mhm.
I have to say, longevity has its place because I was at another institution for 35 years. And I have to say, I was very comfortable, but it takes one to lean into a level of discomfort um, to try something new. And
Mhm.
that's all about changes and transitions. I think it's more challenging for adults than it is for children because we always want to play it safe. So I try and encourage my teachers, what would you like to do? What would you like to know more of? And
Mm.
just making sure that there are resources out there that they can explore. And hopefully, as things open up, they'll be able to do more of that on site because there's nothing more important than standing in that space with other like minded individuals to really gather all that whatever program, presentation, or whatever has to offer.
Yes, that's something that I used to notice. I was an educator before I was a priest, and I always felt like the in services where we would go off somewhere and study something for a few days or a week, you get all these great ideas, but it was so hard to come back and apply it, without because there was never really enough support back in the classroom to sort of experiment with what we'd learned. And so then the default was always the way we did it before.
Oh, the hill we had to climb. I was oh my stars. I went to Reggio on a number of occasions, and I was just sold on this way of working with young children and exploring their learning environments. And I came back every September and I would say, we got to do this, and we got to do this. And that. I mean, I would walk down the hall and teachers would go inside the rooms and close the door. Here comes that lady at Reggio. But I think the best way is to show and not tell because if they see something that is different and inspiring and creative. And, I think they pretty soon people jumped on board with it. It was the same way with ruler and a number of other things. You have to be able to do the work. And that's one thing that I can say about our teachers. They do the work, and I'm there supporting them, doing the work with them, helping them with
Mm.
challenging conversations with parents, helping them with inspiring a child who is just a little bit strong willed. And I just say, just give them some space. No, they got to do this. No, they don't have to do anything. They really need to have some space right now. So understanding that different aspect, because I think that, everybody wants to. The perfection. We're not meant to be perfect. We are meant to be whole and wholly there and wholly present. So sometimes you just have to give people space in order to gain their attention and to attract their curiosity. So
I
yeah,
almost think that could be true for teachers and students alike.
oh yes.
Now
Oh,
we've got a couple of questions in the chat from a dad of a young girl who's going to be entering the P3 butterflies in the fall. So
oh,
first of
okay.
all, he says, thanks for a great conversation. This is Jarrett Dubé. And then he also says, do you have any advice on how to best ensure that she's not overwhelmed, given she's been home throughout the pandemic and unfortunately not exposed to larger group settings and away from her parents?
Oh, okay. Well, I always say baby steps. And
Mhm.
because this child will be entering into our preschool in the fall, you will have an opportunity the first week of August to come with the child, spend time with your child in the learning environment,
Oh, nice.
familiarizing yourself with the classroom, the teachers, and other friends. I try and make this a gentle transition. Like I said, sometimes children are ready, parents aren't. Sometimes parents are ready and children aren't. I say, allow yourself enough time. And if you have to step away, count to 10. Tears may flow and then come back again. You always say, I'll be right back. And then, I always say, tell them that you're going to use the restroom, but please show them where the restroom is so that they don't think that when you leave, you're getting in your car, down the street, around the corner, and home to go use the restroom. Show them where the restroom is right here. When children know the ins and outs of their environment, then they feel like they own that space. It's easier to
Mhm.
let go. It's easier to let go.
And what about that other part of the question about larger group settings? So many children, when you're used to being in your room with your toys and, in your
Mhm.
pandemic life.
Well, this is where the outside really plays an important part because there's enough space to spread out. Inside the classroom and in those four walls, there's maybe a little carpet on the floor, but still the noise is bounding. And I'm one of those that may be sound and light sensitive. But when I go outside, so that sending children outside, 14 children on a yard, if you see the size of our yard, there may be only two children in the bike area or two children around the sand and the water and maybe a few children climbing on the structure. So having them outside gives them the sense of having more space. The other thing that I try to do as well is that for some children and for adults as like is that sometimes we just want to put everything that a child does on the wall. you know, Only in America do classrooms have things, taped to the window. You can't even see blue sky outside because the
Yeah.
windows are there. And sometimes less is more because it can be just a little overwhelming for a child to see things hanging
Okay.
from the ceiling and everything on every wall. So I always say start small and then build upon that after you know the children and who they
Mhm.
are, what they can do. But for a
Mhm.
child who is not used to a lot of children, the outside space is the perfect place to start.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you for that. Now, I just want to back up a little bit. Here's my question. The way that I've heard you talking tonight, it seems like time and again you're able to imagine and understand how different children are looking at the world and experiencing things. And you have this way of finding a a way of talking to them that honors and acknowledges and all of that. How did you figure out how to do that? How were you how 'cause it's amazing. How do you do that?
I think my dad always said I had a little bit of Peter Pan in me. I may grow old, but I'll never grow up. So with a child like mine, I mean, one of the things I think that most adults have forgotten to do, and that is how to play, how to be creative, how to just imagine and just sit in the quiet space and not try and always fill it up. I think that I probably made every, I don't want to call them mistakes, but learning opportunities to get to a point in my life that I can share with parents that say, this time is going to go so fast. Stop and enjoy where you are now. See your child and all that they have to offer. It's a two-way street because at some point, um, they're gonna grow up, you know? I had a mom say to me, "Oh, she's in our bed every single night." I said, "Mm, yeah," I said, "but there'll come a time when she will go to her room and close the door with a sign on it that says, 'Knock before you enter.'" So enjoy these wonderful cuddly moments, and, interesting enough, that child is now in college, and the mother had the biggest separation transition. I mean, she was, wailed
I know.
years.
Oh, that's amazing. So it sounds like you're saying about that you I don't know, it almost sounds like you're still able to listen on a channel that most of us adults don't
I think,
necessarily tune into anymore.
yeah, or on the flip side of that is perhaps I can tune a lot out.
Oh. Oh, a lot of the sort of
Mhm.
pressures of the world beyond so that you can stay in a world that where things make sense to them maybe,
Yeah,
to the children.
but it's like when I work with parents, how I break things down into manageable pieces. What is important now? And then look toward the future. What is your long term or long range plan? And let's start now with what you have and where you are. And I always look at where I am and where the other person that I'm speaking with is. And sometimes they'll give you
Mhm.
information, but that's not truly what they want, help or support with. So I just always say, what, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? And if you give people an opportunity to talk, you really find out what my grandma would say, what's the crust of the biscuit here? What's really the problem?
Yeah, that's true. In my work too, I noticed that what people say is the issue isn't always the issue, but it's in there. It's in there.
It's
Um, so I have another question, and this came a little earlier in our conversation, but I didn't want to forget it. Comfort of Bunamiri is she said, "I'm interested in getting more involved in my community." She just retired recently. What methods have you used that have been successful?
oh, getting involved in a community. Well, first of all, when people know that you have free time, they will have you on
Mhm.
speed dial. They're calling you every moment you have. We have a couple of neighborhood organizations that I belong to. There's always the senior citizen organization that are beginning to open up a little bit
Mhm.
more. I think that's a wonderful way. There are so many, I want to say, grassroots opportunities. Mothers in Action, we give out backpacks for underserved children, um, boxes of
Mhm.
food, and a number of things. Right over here on Crenshaw, there are a number of churches that are doing amazing work. And sometimes you have to create that space for yourself. What you're
Mhm.
passionate about, I think you will spend time and energy with. So understand what you're passionate, whether it's helping elderly, whether it's helping the unhoused, or uh, there's so many ways to get involved. And a lot of things start very small, out of one's garage.
Mhm.
in
That's
many ways.
true.
So if you
Now
start small.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Starting small.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could just say a word or two about how you came to be an educator. How did that how did that happen? I've asked you about how you gained this amazing perspective, but now I'm talking more in a career sense. How did how did you find yourself um, to be an educator?
I won't say that it was by accident, but I grew up in the 60s and early part of 70s where women would either be expected to be nurses or teachers because that was a career choice in which you could stop and raise a family and always go back to. That other than being a secretary as well, and I was never one who could just sit in a seat for any length of time, so I, couldn't be any kind of secretary, shorthand typing or anything like that. I was always very creative, and I really enjoyed art. And I thought, well, I would like to introduce children to art and all that art has to offer because there's no right or wrong. It just is an expression of oneself. So I think that's how I came into teaching, taking art
Mhm.
lessons and um, going to school. My stars, it seems like I've always been in school, but I'm, I'm proud of that. I'm a lifelong learner. So I think there's
Mhm.
always something to really explore. But and then when my children were young and I was looking for a school, and I was one of those creative people that says, I'd like to a creative environment for them to learn. And
Mhm.
a friend and I started preschool in her garage, and then from there they liked what we did, and they took it to the classroom in Chicago, and I loved that. And then I relocated to California. But I think things start small. I want to say some of our biggest achievements start on a grassroots level. So
Mhm.
when you feel good about yourself and when you feel good about what you do, I think there's a passion that you can put into action. So that's how I became a teacher. And I've always, seems like I've always been in school. And when I leave this, you tell comfort, no, there's no such thing. I'm always going to be doing something. I'm always going to be doing something. So I'll have an opportunity to create more of an opportunity. I'll have an opportunity to create more of an opportunity. How's that for a transition?
That's right, because you are transitioning. We don't use the word. What is
Retiring,
the
yeah,
other? What's no? You're not
yeah,
retiring.
no,
You're transitioning.
we're transitioning,
Yeah,
and that's part of development.
it is. It
It's
is.
just
There's so much more to learn and explore. Is there? Can you describe one thing that you're dreaming of for the next stage?
oh, one thing that I'm dreaming of in the next stage, ah, it would probably to be supportive of those individuals who are underserved. Um, I think we share the fact that we've both been in Africa on several occasions. And the first time I went to Africa, it was kind of like a touristy, safari there, but there's something that tugs on your heart that's always calling you back to do
Mhm.
something. You don't know what I got, but I know that I had to do something. And then I landed in school and working with children and digging a well. Not was my favorite thing to do, but I had to prove myself worthy. So I
Mhm.
had to dig a well. But serving the 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 less fortunate, I think, is a way that I just always want to be inspiring. And inspiring people, I want to say, to come back to their roots. I think that for individuals and families in poverty, we're always wanting the best for our children to get the best education so that you can get out into the world and work and leave that sense of poverty. And I think too many of us are leaving worthy environments and worthy neighborhoods. And when you've got this information, when you've got this knowledge, come on back and share it
Mhm.
and build
Mhm.
up those neighborhoods that supported you when you were young. So understanding that we can make this a better place in so many ways and not just abandoning things, but once you've got the knowledge and the know-how, and sometimes it doesn't always take funds. You just know who you
Mhm.
know, and and then
Mhm.
just come back. I would like to work in that capacity. So it's all about out
Mm.
community engagement. I'm not much of a politician, but there are individuals who really will support serving the less fortunate. So you've got to be able to network a little bit too.
I want to interview you again in a few years and find out more about what you're going to be up to. But I know you'll stay involved with St. James as
Oh
well
yeah.
in one
Hmm.
way or another. You're you're such an institution at St. James. So loved, so admired,
Thank you.
constantly inspiring everyone around you, including my son who worked for you for a little while.
Oh, yes, I'm loving that. I hope it comes back. And I
Uh,
want to compliment you too, because one of the reasons why I came and stayed at St. James was that synergy between church and school. I think you do an amazing work with individuals in the community and in the neighborhood. And the fact that you're allowing the children to come and be a part of that is
mm.
so inspiring. It is so very, very, very inspiring. And just all that you do and all that can be done. I mean,
St.
I just,
James St. James Church and St. James School are pretty amazing places, aren't they?
yeah, truly,
We're
truly
really
are.
blessed, and we're so blessed with this time that we've had with you tonight, Dr. Pat. Thank you so, so much. Thank you
Oh,
so much for everything you've been doing all this time and for your time tonight.
oh, thank you. It was my honor. I can't believe time is up already. This
I
was a
know.
wonderful conversation. I love it.
I know. Me too. Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Good night.